Hey everybody, Dan here with Pain Free You. Today's topic is going to be, can we get well fast? So I'll get to that in a minute. I'm pleased. It's kind of gray and brown and still not too green, but look over here. The grass is turning green. So I love it. Spring is here. I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths and then we'll jump onto the topic. Breathing in the nice warm spring air. It's about 58 degrees. Breathe in the clarity. Exhale the confusion. Breathe in the certainty. Exhale the uncertainty. Breathe in the accurate knowledge. Exhale the confusion. So, those couple of words surrounding the breathing may have given a small hint as to what I think is important. So can we get well fast? I will say absolutely. And I will say there's a lot of language bouncing around. TMS, tension myositis syndrome, tension myoneural syndrome, the mind-body syndrome, PPD, psychophysiological pain disorders, distraction, or diversion pain syndrome. There's now a lot of people are using the term neuroplastic pain, and I've started talking about that as well, and I'm rethinking that. Dr. Schubner is calling it neural circuit pain. Neuroplastic pain is kind of talking about how the brain wires things and rewires it. And I talk about that all the time, and I think that's exactly what happens. But that leads us to believe that this wiring, if it's been there for a while, it's going to take a really long time to unwire. I don't believe that's true. Neural circuits are basically kind of like on-off switches. And so neural circuit pain leads you to believe that it's a very temporary, quick thing, as opposed to neural pathways. And people say neural pathways that have been really grooved over the long term, going to take a really long time. And I think that's a incorrect belief system. And I may have perpetuated that. So if I've given you that impression, I apologize. My thinking on this continues to evolve the more I study and try to teach this stuff. So neural circuits, I believe, can change quickly. Neural pathways, I don't know. I think it's just whether or not we're using them is the circuit. It's the signal that's going back and forth. So how do I know that we can get better quickly? Well, first of all, I've seen it with some coaching clients. A lady I worked with, 40 some odd years worth of chronic pain. 3 weeks later, the pain was gone. So that would lead me to believe that these neural circuits that had been perpetuating her pain for all those years were able to be shut off. And I'll get to that, why I think that's the case, or what's required in order for that to happen. There's people with 20 years worth of migraines getting better within a month or two. There's other people. I've had it recently. And I am not saying I've got the magic, bullet here or the magic switch or the easy button, but I had somebody say, "Hey Dan, since our coaching call, I haven't hurt." And I am not suggesting that I can do that for everybody, so please don't interpret it that way. So what do I think is going on? The belief system that it's going to take a really long time may lead to it taking a long time. The belief system that this is difficult and challenging and hard and takes a lot of work and practice and repetition and all that stuff may lead to it taking longer than it needs to. I think there's a few things that if we get them dialed in, the brain can make a different decision and turn off the pain. And here's proof. In your journey, did you ever have a day where, oh my God, I don't hurt? Or You get engaged in life, you're having some fun, maybe you go to a wedding, you go to the beach, you do something fun and engaging, and all of a sudden, you're not hurting. Now, don't get me wrong. In many cases, most of them, you get home and you go, where's the pain? And the brain goes, oh, here it is. But if the brain can turn it off for an hour, a minute, a day, a weekend, a vacation, a week, it can't be these, well-worn neural pathways that are difficult and impossible to change, because if that were the case, then you wouldn't be able to get pain-free. So I don't believe that this has to take a really, really long time. So I think what it really takes is accurate knowledge and understanding really what's going on. This is created by the mind. We need the clarity that this is created in the mind. It's not a physical problem. If you are unsure if it's your body, well, maybe it's physical, maybe it's not. That uncertainty, that lack of clarity, will keep the pain persistent, because the brain is always going to default to keeping you safe by giving you pain to protect you from doing things it believes are dangerous, movement, positions, whatever it may be. But if you've got certainty and clarity that this is all just a decision made in the brain, that's a big first step. Clarity, certainty. Belief. Do you believe you can get better? Do you believe you can learn to turn it off? If you've ever had a pain-free moment, that's evidence it can go off completely, because that is evidence that the brain is turning it on and off. If you're laughing and having a good time and you don't notice your pain, it's actually not there. So, I think a lot of times we make this more difficult or complicated or seem so far out of reach that we literally teach our brain that this is difficult, it's impossible. And with that belief system, the brain's not going to turn it off nearly as fast or as readily. So clarity, accurate knowledge, acceptance that this is the only thing that's causing it. Almost all chronic pain is neural circuit. It is mind-body. I don't believe chronic pain is structural, because the body does heal. It always does. So with the accurate knowledge, the acceptance, and then yes, we do want to connect the dots on the emotional stuff. If we can look back and say, there were some major emotional events going on in my life when the pain started, we can recognize this mind-body element at play. That's more evidence that it is mind-body. And what the brain can turn on, the brain can turn off. If it can turn it on in a flash, the brain can turn it off. And I know this doesn't seem relevant, but if you touch a hot stove, long before any tissue damage happens, the brain decides, whammo, here's the pain, ow! You look at your hand, you're not burnt. And just like that, the pain turns off. It's a circuit in the brain that says, react. And it works. I don't believe chronic pain needs to be any more difficult than that, with the clarity and the certainty that, number one, it's created in the mind, and number two, you have the ability, through consistency of thought and certainty and clarity, to turn it off. And the belief that you can, and the connecting of the dots to the emotional world, I believe you can. And then the rest of it is all about safety. Stop freaking out, because every time you freak out, you're saying to the brain, I'm in danger. And what does a scared brain do? It keeps the symptoms going. Fight or flight, everything elevates, everything amplifies. So I do believe it is very possible to get better fast. And please, for anybody who's watching who has gotten better fast, even if the pain came back a week later, please share that. I want evidence. I want people to share their experience here. If you've been pain-free for 5 minutes and you just said, how the heck did that happen? To me, that's evidence that the brain can turn it off. All we have to do is convince it to turn it off long term instead of just for 5 minutes at a time. And so this doesn't have to be so complicated. If it can happen for 5 minutes, it can happen indefinitely. And I've been able to do that 11 years. I do not have chronic pain. I believe that is available to anybody who's watching, to anybody who's out there. But you do need certainty. You do need to understand that this is a mind-created, brain-created issue. And I don't think it's these long, long-worn neural pathways that are just going to take, if you've been in pain for 2 years, it's going to take 2 years to undo it. Bullshit. I don't think that's the case. It's a neural circuit pain. And I love that language that Dr. Schubner is using now, because that, to me, is a much more accurate representation of, I think, what's going on. And so if that neural circuit keeps on firing and firing and firing, moment by moment, that's chronic pain. But if it can turn off even for a day or an hour or a minute, that means it can turn off completely because it's created in the brain. So all we've got to do is give the brain correct information, accurate data as to what's going on in the belief system that says, yeah, I can turn this off. The clarity is really, really important. Get rid of the uncertainty. Connect the dots emotionally to what was going on. If there's a pain flare, if you can, connect the dots. If you can't, don't worry about it. The rest of the game is safety, consistency. Feel your emotions. Soothe your body. Breathe. Calm your thinking, because our thinking oftentimes is what's giving the brain instructions to keep things persistent and going. Indifference. It's really useful. Live your life as if you don't have pain. I know that sounds really crazy, and people are going, fuck you, Dan. I can't do that. I hurt too bad. I can't walk. I can't leave the house. I can't do this. As best as possible, make living your life more important than fixing the pain. And if you can't be indifferent, at least don't freak out, because freakouts, just keep it persistent. The more time you spend freaking out and crying and worrying about your symptoms, the more you are delaying recovery. And if you can't be indifferent and you're not freaking out, reassure yourself. The cognitive thinking reassurance, along with a nice breathing, relaxation of the body, and as much as possible, repeat and reassure yourself of that accurate knowledge called the mind-body syndrome, neural circuit pain. Remind yourself that if it can turn off even for 5 minutes, it can turn off indefinitely. It doesn't have to take forever. What do you guys think? Share with me, please, your take on this and your experience with pain turning off, even for a short period of time. Now, some people will say, mine never turns off, so this isn't going to work for me. Please don't go there, because if that is your frame of reference, those are the instructions that your brain is operating under, and you'll be less likely for it to turn off even for 5 minutes. But look for examples and evidence of pain turning off, if even for a short period of time. Because if that is true, then it's not these well-worn neural pathways that have been grooved over the years and are going to take years to get rid of. Because if that's true, if neural pathways couldn't disconnect and stop those signals, then you wouldn't get pain-free even for a moment. But if you experience times of being pain-free, then you're good. How about the people who wake up and they're fine in the mornings, but then the pain picks up later and later in the day? Or the people who wake up and they're in really bad pain, but later in the day, as it's getting close to bed, they're not feeling so bad. That just indicates if it can change up and down so drastically. It's the brain doing it. Certainty, clarity. Believe it. Believe you can turn it off. So hopefully you found this useful. Love you guys and gals. I will see you tomorrow.